All right, we are live. And on today's episode, alongside my co host, Kennedy McConnell, I interview an embodiment coach who works deeply at the intersection of physicality and transformation, helping to bridge the gap between imagining and being. He's just released his life work and book, Embody Your Potential, a bridge between imagining and being, which is now available on Amazon. Welcome to the Winner Circle, Mateo Marin Rosini.
Thanks for having me, guys. Also go by Mateo Flows. It's a pleasure to be here in the Winner's Circle.
Beautiful. So the goal of these conversations is to really uplift, inspire, and empower everyone tuning in to move forward with greater faith, belief, and trust in themselves on their hero's journey ahead. And I'm so excited to delve into your story, Mateo. To set things up, we're going to start things really positive, and that is, what do you love about your personal world right now? Not the external chatter, but your personal world. What do you love about that?
I think we live in a really exciting time, and I live in a very exciting nexus of that space-time. I think Austin, Texas is a very beautiful place to be. I feel my immediate community is really on the precipice of crossing through a lot of thresholds that humanity has been trying to build towards, a lot of breakthroughs in terms of ways of relating that foster heart-found connection, methods of being in the world that are not just magical but practical. And it's an honor to be a part of so much of the magic that I'm witnessing around me. Like when I say that the community that I get to interact with and contribute to is special, I think there may have never been anything like this in all of history up until this point. We really have technology now that puts us in a place where we can really break through a lot of blocks that held people back. And we're also remembering like the ancient wisdom that has been so long forgotten, bringing that back to the forefront in a way that really serves us. So I'm grateful to be where I'm at and grateful to be contributing. It's something you'll hear from me a lot when you talk to me in person. I'm just really grateful and blessed to the point where sometimes it's hard to believe. And I just feel called to continue to show up better, to be worthy of the blessings that surround me.
Beautiful. That's so exciting. One thing that I ask everyone as we start the conversation is pertaining to their personal mission so that the listeners can get a better idea of who you are. So in your amazing world right now, the thriving Austin, Texas, what are you doing there? What is your mission? How are you
Yeah.
serving?
I am a force for transformation. I awaken those around me through example. I embody execution, push towards resistance, and I'm working on my best to be able to go play in every moment.
How are you doing that?
Well, one of the ways is doing my best to begin to share the keys that have been so potent and transformational to me. I do believe that in the area I'm in, a lot of this stuff is really well known, but it's a special space-time nexus where a lot of the world has yet to catch up. And while it does seem like the momentum is kind of picking up at a very rapid rate, and a repeating theme for me has been the things that I've found so useful start to become mainstream like 2 or 3 years later, whether it's breath work or ice baths or, the list goes on. But there's some really awesome, neat modalities and aspects and perspectives, contextual lenses that I just feel like I'm here to share with the world. And I know that when these things do distribute on a larger scale, like I see is inevitable, we're going to be living in a very different reality than we have been in the past decade or so. Yeah.
I was just thinking, what was your process of realizing that you were meant to share, that these messages were meant to come through you and help others?
Very early on, I always loved listening to podcasts, right? Like early Joe Rogan experience, Tim Ferriss. There was this guy, Derek Silvers, and he was a really fascinating individual. He's come back on a few times and shared some really cool perspectives. But one thing that really stood out to me is he said, our job in this world is to be distillation mechanisms, or distillers, I guess. So this idea that it's less about what originally we can create and bring, and more so what we are uniquely interested in and how we can distill that and bring that through to the world in a way that's easily consumable, right? So they're taking all the books you've read, all the stuff you've listened to, all the wisdom you have, in filtering it through the lens that is your unique perspective and experience in this world, and then presenting it as something that then can be shared further down the line. And it's like, we are nodes in a network constantly refining. And I'm just a part of that much larger vision. I am standing on the shoulders of giants much wiser than me. 90% of what's in this book is not stuff that I came up with, but stuff that I've read a whole book and I've tried to distill down what are the most actionable pieces of that. And then I've taken all those actionable pieces and tried to compile them with unique, novel connections, which add new value. And I think that's a lot of what human innovation is. This is what the scientific method often is. It's not like this unique breakthrough. It's like taking red and blue and making purple. And that's usually where the most powerful steps forward tend to come from in humanity. So I'm just trying to play my role in that, because I think we all are in one way or another.
Mm-hmm. So these conversations are called Welcome to the Winner Circle. And to me, being a winner is embracing the process over the destination. We live in a very destination oriented world where, like, when I get this job, when I get this career, when I get this relationship, when I get this whatever, happy, and then we get there and it's like, oh, now what? Like, it's just a momentary joy, and then it's what's next. So for me, being a winner is embracing a process, delighting in the sweetness of the song to where you're going. When where you're going is already here, and it's embodying that in the present. That's winning to me. What does being a winner mean to you, and what does winning in your life currently look like?
I think winning it's an attitude of serious play, where while you maintain this aspect of everything is playful and joyful, you're still giving it your all. You're still coming with that serious attitude of trying to be the best version of yourself, not being flippant, not being dismissive, not, this comes from Ido Portal. He says a lot of times, like, people, when they're in a state of flow, they tend to be a little bit less committed to doing their best. And then people who are in there focused on their best can often lose that state of flow. So, like many things in life, it's like this balancing act. I think true winning is not being too obsessed with the end goal, but also, acting as if you are obsessed with the end goal. It's like when you're doing jujitsu, right? Like you got to have that looseness that allows you to tap without being all about it. You have to have that state of play that allows new neural connections to form. But you also, you can't just be half-assing your way through it. You can't just be not ever trying to win, not ever trying to get better, because you're not just doing a disservice to yourself, you're doing a disservice to whoever you're playing with. So being a winner is trying to win, without getting too attached to the losses that tend to come around the way, learning to play the meta game, learning to try to win the largest game, which is beyond the self game, right?
I
Like
love that.
true winning is when we all get better.
And losing is also winning because it's an opportunity to learn and grow.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So, what does your win look like for you? Like, what's your typical day look like for your day? Like, when we used to know each other more, when I was in Austin a lot more often, you were teaching yoga, doing steel based flow, teaching that, and things have changed since we last connected. So yeah, what does your life look like for you these days, Mateo?
I mean, my biggest wins are whenever I see my clients making progress, whenever I see the people I'm working with have breakthroughs. Those are the moments where it's just like, okay, I'm on the right path. I'm doing the right thing. Or those moments like I was talking about when I'm all of a sudden I'm in this community and we're in this space where I look around, I'm like, I can't believe this is real. How did I get here? Like, I must be doing something right. Like I said, the people that I'm blessed to associate with, they are like, they say don't put people on a pedestal. I put a lot of the people around me on very high pedestals. And it just feels like if I can continue to be a valuable contributor and worthy of being in their presence, I'm doing something right. I'm winning. And just continuing to let the expression flow through me to the world. I want to make an impact like we all do. I want to leave behind a legacy. And again, it's not about the actual doing it as much as the aiming for it every day, trying your best every day, and leaving nothing back. Finding a balancing act between giving your all and the multi-dimensionality that is the human experience, giving your all and knowing when enough is enough, right?
It's interesting about the pedestal thing, because that's a point of topic I talk about often, and it's really an inspiration behind like this whole podcast. I feel so often people put others on pedestals because they're not willing to do the work and step up themselves, whereas I feel you are doing it. I feel when people put others on pedestals, it's like, oh, like they have a book, they have all this success, like I can't do that. Whereas you are doing the thing. I feel, rather than having these people on pedestals, I don't know if that's the right word, what you're doing. I feel like you're being inspired by these people, but you also recognize, and I think you would agree with this, that what they are doing, you can't do that too. Maybe that's not where you are, but you're walking that path. You're on that same path as they, in my eyes.
I think the distinction is I don't put strangers on pedestals. I put my close friends on pedestals. I put my immediate tribe on pedestals, and that makes me inspired to rise to meet them. I think when you put strangers on a pedestal, you're not recognizing them for the human they are. When you know someone deeply for the human they are, and you still like are in admiration of them, and they are somebody who, looks back at you and reflects that admiration, you putting them up higher just makes you want to strive to be worthy of the admiration they're reflecting back to you. So it's different when you have a back and forth relationship, whether it's like, or it's just going one way, right? So in that sense, I'm like, yeah, man, like we have a connection now, like that. The more our connection deepens, the more I see your wins, and I'm like, damn, he's doing it. Whereas if we're just strangers, it's like, I can't, I don't have that connection that enables me to really truly admire the work behind what you're having to do to get where you're going. And I think that's a little different, where if it's a stranger, you're only seeing the wins, you're putting the wins on the pedestal. You're not putting the human that they are on the pedestal. So that's just how I look at it.
The struggles that they have to overcome, and the challenges they've had to face, and the fear they've had to stare in the eyes to get to where they are. And those are the same fears that we all go through. Those are the same struggles. Like we're all on the same hero journey.
Yeah.
If we choose.
Yeah. Or whether or not we choose, it all depends on how you look at it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what have been some of your biggest accomplishments that you have been most proud of to this date, Mateo?
It's been a really interesting experience, being me, because I mean, how long ago was it we were on it, man? Is that 5 years?
7, like I've been
like 7 years ago. So
there for 3 years. So I was like from 7 to 4 years ago.
yeah, I have been, and I want to say this without sounding too like full of myself or cocky, but I have been an early adopter on so many things that I have seen spread to the world. And to the point where like a lot of them are kind of played out now. And I feel like a transformational hipster in a lot of ways. Like when I was doing breath work, I didn't know anybody my age who was doing breath work. I was one of the few people in Austin, Texas leading breath work at the beginning. Now everybody and their aunt is a certified breathwork instructor. I was one of the first, I was the second person in Austin, Texas to flow with the mace before steel mace flow became this worldwide sensation and phenomenon, right? I was training on it when Bang Muay Thai and 10th Planet Jiu Jitsu were in the same building. This vibrational sound bed thing, which I don't know if that's gotten to you guys yet, but will in the future. I was one of the pioneers of building DIY, putting transducers on the bottom of tattoo parlor tables and experimenting with how we could use these vibrational therapies in different ways to create powerful shift states. And it's like I was doing ice baths a decade ago, So it's just been a very interesting experience to see like what I felt was so fringe very quickly starting to be adopted, to the point where now I'm feeling like I need to be constantly pushing frontiers. I need to be constantly, it's almost like an evolutionary pressure, because I very much have this ingrained archetype of like the anime superhero Pokemon. I want to be the very best that no one ever was. So I can't ever stay stuck where everyone is coming. So as the tide continues to rise, I just feel like I have to keep climbing to try to find like what is the next edge. And I take a lot of pride in being on that front line and pushing the frontiers of what it's going to take to get us to the potential I know that we can reach collectively.
So what's next? What do you see in the forefront?
These vibrate the future is very vibey. I'll tell you that. Vibration is going to be a big element of the future. These Opus sound beds that my friends are creating is amazing. I have one on my right next to my bed that I use, and it's essentially a table you lie on, and it vibrates you, but it has 7 channels, so it can target different energy centers with different vibrational frequencies. I'm a big believer that that's going to be in the huge in the future. I also have a vibrational stuffed dolphin that is really nice. His name's Finley. He has transducers in him, and you can hug him and he'll vibe you up. I think that is like a lot of where the future lies. I think the ability to like know the right frequencies and send them into the right places is how we're going to start to begin to recalibrate. And I see this emerging a lot in like festival settings and festival spaces. I'm a big believer that the spaces of not even transformational festivals, let's just say rave EDM festivals are very undertapped in their potential and magic. I think there's something very special going on in these spaces that has not been completely recognized and acknowledged. And I think the potential to capture and harness transformation out of those is going to be a big thing in the next, decade or so. I call this rave shamaning, right? And there's a lot of like conscious festivals where, this is kind of in the ethos. And then there is like the rave EDM scene where it's not. And I think there's going to be a merging of these worlds. I recently saw a video from like Norway or something where it was like a giant dance party, and then in the back they had a bunch of massage tables where people were getting massage. And I was like, yeah, that's the future right there. Because when you're getting blasted with this low end vibrational frequency and you've been moving in this mass of bodies, there's this conjoined sense of energy that really opens you up, and there's an opportunity for the fascia to really release in those settings. And learning how to better connect to what our body is holding and release and unlock things from the body on up, I think is a big thing in the future. I think we're going to be returning to the body much deeper, coming from the mind back into our physical felt sense, and then from the physical felt sense, building our way back up. The future is very it's very vibey, I like to say. So yeah, that's a piece of it. Also, okay. Ketamine massages.
So how did we get here? So how did Mateo become Mateo? Let's trace back to your origin story. Start back where you wish. But where did this thirst for just embodying your potential and optimization and just always looking for like the next thing to transcend to the next level? How did this come into play?
Like I said, I want to be the very best and no one ever was. It's the Pokemon theme song, y'all. Ever since I was a little kid.
Ash Ketchum inspired.
So it's a repeating archetype, and a lot of it was inspired by early anime. There is this theme called shonen in anime, which is this archetype of this untalented social outcast who, through persistence and pure devotion to his morals and principles and willing to being sacrifice even his own life to defend the people he loves, and pure hard work and training, rises through the ranks to become one of the greats. And that is a story that is told over and over through different characters and different mediums. And that has resonated with me since I was a little kid. And I don't think I'm alone in this. You see a lot of people in the gym who used to like Dragon Ball Z. You see a lot of people in the dojo who training martial arts who grew up on anime. This theme, I think it's almost like a modification of the hero's journey, where it particularly speaks to this dichotomy between starting off with talent. There usually is a character who's very talented who juxtaposes the character who's not very talented. There usually is this essence of like dark mystery with like lighthearted naivety. going back and forth, and this way that these two archetypes play off each other in this power dynamic as they compete to rise among the ranks to be the best, has, you know, it's definitely left a huge imprint on me since I was a little kid. And that's manifested in many forms, you know, from the time when I was obsessed with hip hop music. It's like every rapper raps about how they're the best rapper. It's like this ethos of nobody can do it better than me. I'm the best that ever did it. Come step to me. You know, that MC energy was also an essential aspect of my ethos growing up. And I think all of those kind of evolving layers laid a deep foundation for who I am today, and the reason that I strive to push to make an impact in the way that I do.
And now you wrote a book.
Dude, yeah, that was a big thing, man. I mean, I look back at some of my Evernote notes from almost a decade ago, and there's thoughts. I mean, I've been wanting to write a book for a long time, and there's some thoughts from 10 years ago that like evolved and made it into what this book is today. It's been about a year and a half of consistent work, though, about, you know, like 5-hour days, 5 days a week, just staring at a screen till my eyes start to bleed. But you know what? Here it is. I brought it into being. And I really am excited to share this with the world, because what this book is, like I was saying before, it's a distillation. I had to read 50 books to write this book. And if you read this book, it'll save you so much time from having to read all the things that I went through. So many times as I was writing this book, I found another book and I was like, oh, this is the book I'm trying to write. And then I was like, all right, that saves me a whole, let's go through this book, find the important parts, and try to take the valuable pieces. So what this book is this is a collection of different maps and keys. Maps being ways of looking at the world to understand and find our way through, and keys being perspectives that imply action, right? So not just ways of looking at the world, but ways in which if you look at the world, it tells you to act in a certain way, and acting in that certain way can help you to get through certain blocks. An example would be use what works over what's true. That's a key because it frees you up from trying to focus on like what is the right thing, and allows you to just focus on what is the thing that works. It's like what Bruce Lee says, use only what works, take from it wherever you find it, and disregard the rest. When you have that as a central thesis, it now implies a way of acting in the world. And that way of acting can help you get past a lot of blocks that might trap other people. So that's what this book is, a collection of maps and keys. I hope to share some of the best with y'all today.
Yeah. What are you curious about his book?
I'm curious who this book is written for, like who is ready to read this book, who's ready to receive these keys.
Yeah. And this book is for anybody with a body who's trying to become their best. Now, that's a wide range, but I really did write it in a way where I think it's accessible to the layman who knows nothing about this subject, and yet also highly interesting to somebody who's been a seeker on this path for their whole life. It's like if you like me have spent much of your life in pursuit of valuable insights, you're going to find a lot of stuff that you know, but also a ton of stuff that you didn't, which is like very important. And if you've never done this stuff, if it's like this is your aunt who's been caught in the matrix and never even considered taking a deep breath in her life before, she can open this up and start from zero and start to find the context to understand the deeper, more woo stuff. So it's built in a way to take you from your body up to, the spirit realm, and from science to explainable magic. So it very much progresses from like a scientific layman understanding to, by the end, we're talking about how do you invoke angels? How do you tame your demons? How do you craft spells? But all of that is laid with the foundation of, we're not talking about woo nonsense. We're talking about patterns of thought. We're talking about language structures and how they influence the way that we actually show up in the world. So, it's very progressive in that I think it could be accessible to anybody and highly interesting to those who are already deep on the path.
Great. I wanted to know as well, did the book evolve as you were writing it? Did you know exactly how it was going to turn out, or did it change a lot as you were writing?
No, like I said, I very much had I had one idea. I had many ideas for the book, but one of the ideas I really had was to write a book about the psychosomatic connections between our mind and our body. And it just by chance, I happened to stumble upon this book called Body Mind by Ken Deutschwald. And I was reading this book and I'm like, wow, this dude wrote the book I was going to write. So that saved me a lot of time, and that I was able to go through his book and take the pieces I wanted from that. And that actually became a section of my book. So yes, the book evolved many times. As I was going through it, I would take in more information. I learned a lot writing this book. Like I did not know, I knew maybe a quarter of the stuff when I started writing the book. And then as I was researching, as I was exploring, as I was, I would learn new things, and those new things would become new pieces and they'd form new connections. And, the general framework, which is this meta map of being, which is essentially that if you think about the three basic layers that our awareness can attend to, there is our body, right? We can be aware of our body. There is our mind. We can be aware of our mind. And there is our energy and emotion, which is kind of an intermediary fluid force between the two. And that being the basic structure that was in place when I began, but a lot of the nuance in context definitely evolved through the writing process.
And I'm sure you learned a lot about yourself in the process of writing as well.
I'm very much in the infant stages of taking all of this and learning how to more deeply apply it to myself. I think that's going to be the work of a lifetime. A very important part of this book, you'll notice, it's a first edition, right? This is a book I will be working on for the rest of my life. It will come out in various volumes. It could have been this thick, right? A lot of the work was in the distillation. It was in like, how do I cut away all the deep stuff to just make it like the one sentence you need to know. But if I had waited for it to be perfect, it would never be out. So I really pushed to get this version out into the world because I think people need these tools now. And like I said, I do intend to further refine how I can apply all of this to myself and continue to evolve what this work will be. I want this to be the ultimate reference guide for anybody who's trying to become their best. And I know that's a very lofty, ambitious goal, but that's what we're here for, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think how to phrase this next question. But I see it a lot in like the wellness world, the wellness sphere, like the constant search to better oneself,
Yeah.
where like the you in the now is perfect exactly as you are. How do you balance that thirst for improvement and optimization while being content and in the knowing that I am enough?
So balance is crucial. Balance is crucial to your posture, right? I want to bring a lot of this stuff, which I think is really interesting, back to the physical body, right? So for example, let's say our leaning forward is our drawing towards something better. And let's say our sitting back is our acceptance of what is. You can't be so far back because then you start to get compressed and stuck in the back. And you can't be so far forward because then you start to get crunched in this like forward wanting posture. What you need is a proper push pull from both directions. When you have that proper push pull, what you have is tensegrity, tensional integrity, which is the ability to maintain an intention against external forces. So only through this proper push-pull relationship can we hold our structure both physically, emotionally, and mentally in a way that is resilient to external forces so that we can stay true to what we intend to do. So, and I think this applies to all things. This applies to being in your head versus being in your body. This applies to being too grounded versus too up in the ether. This implies if you're too focused on the future and not focused on the present. But it can also go both ways, right? There is people who are too content with where they're at, and they're not striving for anything better. So that balance can be off in both directions. It's not about one. It's like, are you really, I remember the first time I had this realization. I was getting deep into Eckhart Tolle and I was pushing shopping carts at Trader Joe's. And I was practicing my spiritual practice. And I started to get a little scared because I'm like, oh shit, I could be truly content doing this all day. Just pushing shopping carts. And I'm like, wait, I don't want to be truly content just pushing shopping carts all day. Like that is not what I'm here for. And that is a dangerous aspect of being two, like, I like to say it like this, right? There is positive and negatively charged emotional states. Contentment is a positive passive state, whereas depression is a negative passive state. Both of them are passive states. Just because one is positively charged doesn't necessarily mean it's better. Just like anger is a negative forward propulsion state, and inspiration is a positive forward propulsion state. Anger is not necessarily bad just because it's negative. It might move you forward. So sometimes, I think it's not about what is good or what is bad. It's about what is working to get you where you want to go. And if you're happy where you are, you're happy where you are. If you're not, then maybe you should move.
How do you self-assess this? Like, how do you do that self-inquiry process? What does the yours look like?
I think everybody is very different in this regard. I think I know my disposition is to be a doer in this world, whereas my girlfriend, she's more of a beer. I think everybody has their different dispositions. I know that I've made pacts with my soul and with God very early on to sacrifice my present happiness for my future fulfillment. But I also know that some people do that too much on one side or another. I think you have to know yourself. You have to know who you are as a person. And that means kind of tuning out the external world. In order to get clear with your own internal signal, you have to kind of cancel out the external noise. I believe within all of us, there is a calling towards, whether it's a calling towards being more present or a calling towards doing more, going further. And it's about, like, can you connect to that inner call? Can you clear, less about can you connect to that inner call, but more, can you clear what's in the way and fogging that inner call? Because that inner call is already, I think of it like a light shining through, and you just have to, like, get the cultural conditioning, the physical tensional holding, the internal imposed narratives, all of that clear, and then let that calling guide you. And that's what this book is about. It's about, how do you bring that calling into being? How do you live that calling moment to moment? So yeah, it's highly individual, and people just have to clear what's in the way to search within themselves.
I'm so curious to hear more about these maps and keys that are in the book. Any specific ones that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah. So I was thinking about this. I'm like, what do I want to share out of this book? I think one that's really interesting. So I was talking about Body Mind by Ken Deutschwald, right? He did an amazing job of mapping psychosomatic connections. So, like, the physical body is a storehouse. I'll read a few of them to you and some of them are pretty well known, like the difference between your right and left side being masculine and feminine. We're all heard that one. There's also, like, the top of your body and your bottom of your body, where your top of your body is more engaged with, like, external connection to the world. It's our mouth, it's our hands, it's how we talk, it's how we engage. Whereas our lower body is more connected with supporting ourselves, holding ourselves up. How do we actually move through space? There is the head, which is more mental, our body, which is more physical. There is our front side, which is more of our conscious self, and our back side, which is more of our unconscious self. So just in these, like, examples, there's our torso, which is like our core, and our limbs, which is more of our extension of ourself. You start to be able to begin to form an idea of how our emotional, psychological aspects are actually held in our physical body. But then it gets deeper as you start to go into each part of your body. So, like, I could talk about the feet, but instead of, like, going into these things, I think what's really, really fascinating is that we already know so much of this stuff, and a lot of it is just forgotten. I can prove that by just looking at idioms. Are you familiar with idioms? Do you know what that word means? They're like old cultural sayings. For example, don't be a tight ass, right? We all say that, but what does it mean to be a tight? Let me ask you, what does it mean to be a tight ass?
You're uptight, you're tense, you're more stressed, you're more worried about the little things.
I think you're
And
holding.
can you imagine what a tight ass looks in a physical body? Like, how someone is holding themselves? They have their hips tucked and they're squeezing their butt, right? So right there, you have this, like, ancient understanding of, like, if you hold yourself in this way, you will show up in the world in this way. And this is just a quick, like, so let's say, for example, I'm putting my foot down. What does it mean to, or I'm planting my heels. What does that mean?
You're taking a stand. Like you're
I'm not moving, right? Like I draw the line here, you're not going to move me further. So just in that, we have this understanding that when we put our heel on the ground, it's a stopping mechanism. I find that fascinating because it reveals that like heel striking when you're running is not an optimal way of being able to move through the world, because every step that you're taking, you're actually creating a stopping force. So I have this, perspective on movement that you should be moving very light on your heels, right? And that is represented in this ancient idiom, this ancient understanding. And also people who, what does it mean to be a twinkle toes, right? People who are way up on their heels, light on their toes. Those people are very airy. So once again, we have this balancing between like one end of a spectrum and another end of a spectrum, being firmly like rooted and stuck in the mud versus being so up in the ether that you're easily pushed over. So I'm gonna just like, what does it mean to be on your toes? It means you're alert, you're ready to react, right? People say this like, hey, be on your toes, right? What is a knee-jerk reaction? Right? It's like all these, like we have these ways of understanding that we say, but we never really think about like, oh yeah, what does that mean? So, I want to just read some idioms off to you and see how they land with you.
okay.
What does it mean to get something off of your chest?
Let it out.
Yeah. Why do we say get it off of your chest though?
Feels like a weight. It feels heavy. You're
And what are the
releasing
things we usually aren't getting off of our chest?
emotions, feelings, thoughts.
Like stuff related to like our heart and our deep longings. Like that is held in this space, right? And so we say that all the time. We say, get it off your chest, without like fully comprehending this deep connection between like how we store these like emotional, more sensitive, heartfelt parts of ourselves in constriction in a physical location. Is his heart in the right place? That's another idiom. Is your heart in the right place? So our heart is it's actually an amplifier. It is where energy from our solar plexus starts to move up and starts to get expanded before it gets expressed through our throat and through our hands into the world. And when our heart isn't in the right place, the way that we are acting and engaging in the world is not fully centered into the will that we're trying to bring up through our body. So I'm fascinated by these old sayings, right? Keep someone at arm's length, or get the weight off your shoulder. Okay, here's fascinating. We say get it off your chest. We also say get the weight off your shoulders. What's the difference between the two?
I feel like when you're in the shoulders, like you're in your parasympathetic, and then you relax your shoulders, you relax. And the same thing with the chest. Like when you're let it out of your chest, or whatever your idiom was, is like you have to do so, you have to open up your posture, which both you and I as yogis, like we know the importance of that. So to be able to do certain of these things, we have to manipulate our body. We have to change the way we show up in space.
Shoulders to me feels more like mental weight.
Nailed it. Gold star. Gold star. So yeah, 100%. The shoulders carry the burden of our mental mind. So our head is where our mental world is, our thoughts and projections of who we should be. When we are not able to bring those into being through our actions into the world, the weight gets caught in our shoulders. Our heart is kind of an expander of how we're walking in the world. So where energy is coming up through the heart out into the world, we say, get it off your chest. When you're having this mental model that you can't quite bear the weight of bringing into reality, it gets held in your shoulders. So just in this, we start to see like these different ways in which our mental, emotional energy manifests inside of our physical structure. So that's a fascinating aspect of this whole map, right? This relationship between all these layers of ourself. And a central thesis is the body comes first. I say the body comes first because physicality is closer to objective reality, whereas psychology is closer to subjective reality. Like it doesn't, and this as a jujitsu practitioner, it doesn't matter how good you think you are at jujitsu. If you're getting tapped, you're getting tapped, right? Like that's the essence of what comes first in this world. And it's also true in the sense that our nervous system develops before our mind develops. So we feel things before we're fully able to think things. So just this base like layer of saying that the body comes first, it is a key. and that it reveals a way to act that is useful. So for example, if I'm facing something in my life and I can't figure out the solution, right? Instead of trying to solve it through my mind and knowing the stress that is involved around that, I will move my body so that I can get my physical body right. So then my energy and emotions will start to regulate. So then I can then think from a clear perspective. The body comes first. And this is just an example of how we can start to use this map to navigate life. So that's one example. There's a lot more, but I'll open anything you guys want to say on that.
I love that.
What else are you curious about his book? What dimension? Physicality, mentality, emotionality, spirituality.
I guess I'm curious how to overcome those initial barriers to implementing everything, to actually integrating the information when it's brand new to us. Like, any tips for integrating it fully?
Totally.
I mean, I guess you said you're doing the same thing. You're still learning as you go.
It's a never-ending process, right? We're never gonna. So in this pursuit of calling, right? There is, I'm sure you guys have heard of this, the force of resistance, which is the oppositional polarity to this calling forward in life. And we are constantly pushing against resistance so that we can reach further towards our potential. Now, the great thing about this is we are never going to win. We actually are inevitably going to lose and end up under the ground. So it's not necessarily about how do you win this game, but it's how do you get the personal high score, right? That's how I like to think about it. It's like resistance is the ultimate sparring partner. And it's really a blessing, because what fun would a game be once you've beat it, you know? Like, I want to be 90 years old, still trying to get better, still trying to improve. So how do you begin, right? The first thing is to recognize resistance as a thing. I think that's really important, because until you recognize that this is a force of nature, you are often caught in association with it. So once you can recognize this as a force of nature, then the game truly begins. How do you start to play once the game begins? Well, I have a chapter called Mastering Your Will. This is an important element because none of us have unlimited will capacity, and will is kind of the resource that we spend in our efforts towards resistance. Like, I can sit here and say, I'm not going to eat for a week, but eventually my will might break. Or I can sit here and say, I'm going to do 20,000 push-ups, but eventually my will might break. The will, like the body, is something that can be trained. It can be developed. And we know this as a fact. And it's a very interesting thing because it doesn't have a set limit, but it is limited. So it's like, it is related to what you believe you can do. Turns out, if you believe that you have unlimited will, your will is a lot better than somebody who believes they have limited will. If you really want something, and here's another interesting thing, if what you're striving towards is related to your calling, you will have more will than if it is not. So understanding how willpower works is an essential aspect of starting to make forward progress. And there's some principles behind mastering your will that I think are important. One, start small first, right? It's very crucial that in making commitments to yourself, you actually achieve them. And I work with a lot of people, so it's really fascinating to watch people go through this process of saying like, hey, I'm going to do this amazing thing, and then repeatedly not do it. Repeatedly set these intentions for themselves that they fail. When you set intentions and you continue to fail them, what you are training yourself in is that it's okay to fail. Now, let's bring this back to the body for a second. Let's say my intention is to hold my spine neutral as I do a deadlift, right? As I focus too much on the external process of trying to lift this weight off the floor, what happens is I eventually compensate in order to achieve that goal. My spine might start to round, right? So over time, I'm actually in training that compensation, which is a physical practitioner, leads to imbalances and eventually injury. So we need to focus more on the internal process than the external process in order to not compensate our internal alignment in order to achieve the external physical goal. And this happens with like integrity, right? Like if your goal is to make money, but you're sacrificing your morals, that's a emotional, psychological form of compensation. So as we're slowly progressing on this, just like lifting weight, we start small. and we focus on the internal alignment through it. Over that, we build resiliency that eventually allows us to do more and more. So starting small first is important. Also, there's this great saying that the man who chases 2 rabbits catches none. You have to be very clear on what your goal actually is and have an entry point that you can actually achieve. So sometimes there's a lot of people, they need to do a lot of things in order to really change their life, but they're not even drinking water. So it's like, you got to start with drink water, like get your feet on the ground. Like there's you identify what are the highest return leverage points, and you start to build a foundation upon those. The other important aspect is clarity. You need to be very clear on what it is you're trying to do and why it is you're trying to do it. Clarity is a superpower because it is what minimizes the resource of willpower spent, right? So if you have something very vague and you're not super clear on it, it takes a lot more willpower to commit to it. Like, for example, if I say, I don't really want to smoke anymore, it's like, good luck not smoking. But if you say, I'm not going to smoke for a week because I want to be healthy and I care about how my kids see me and I don't want to be in the hospital, you're much more likely to achieve that because you have a set goal that's reasonable, small chunks, and you have your why clear. You know exactly how long you're doing it. You could even create a if then this commitment where you allow for some flexibility in that structure of intention. So you say, all right, if I do fail, I have to do 100 push-ups. So that way you're setting yourself up for, even if you fail, you're not failing because you've built that into the intention. So you're actually building a little bit of flexibility into the structure of your intention. Or if I succeed, I'm going to get this. So you have a punishment on one side and a reward on the other side, which can kind of reinforce your way forward. So start small first, get clear. And then it's really important that you put yourself in an environment to succeed, because our external is so impactful on.
Looks like he may have cut out. I'm sure he will
Return,
sort that out,
sure.
but we have you and I to talk.
What do you think so far? I want to hear more keys.
Yeah, it's amazing. I want to hear his keys he's learned about fear. Oh,
I lost you guys for a second there. You're back now.
okay, well, there's 2 of us. We're able to fill this space just fine, and we're just talking about, like, what did we think of the conversation so far? What do we want to know more of? And Kennedy is super curious to hear some more keys.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested in just learning from your research for this book, all the reading you've done, but also from your personal experience, your relationship with fear, and what you've learned from the people you've looked up to, and your own experience on like using that as an ally and using it to help you move forward towards your goals. So those are the 2 things that we're most excited to chat as we continue this discussion.
You know, there's a lot of people who work more intimately with fear than I do. I'd say the understanding of fear that I'm working with most in this book is that all of our emotions stem from a root of 8 emotions that all have to do with, it's kind of like colors, right? I call this the art of emotions in this chapter. There's like base colors that then combine to form tertiary colors. And then those like form the whole palette of our emotional experience. Fear is one of those. And I don't think fear is necessarily a bad thing. I'll read to you a little bit about what I have in here from fear. Fear stands as the antithesis of anger. So, right, both of these are reactions to things that we feel are unsafe, whereas anger is a response to confront, fear is a response to flee, right? So it plays a crucial role in survival, which is like, I think recognizing that our fear is actually, it's supposed to serve us is important, because when we recognize these, when I identify it as a reoccurring thought pattern or loop, I refer to it as a daemon or demon, which is just a recognizable reoccurring loop. And when you can recognize that these loops are not malintended, but they're actually just outdated programs that are trying their best to serve you, then you can kind of acknowledge them, bow to them, thank them, and dismiss them, which I think is actually one of the big keys to taming your internal demons. So fear as a larger, it comes in many forms and many faces, but it is actually trying to help us. It's a response to anticipated loss of needs. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Sensationally, it elicits a very specific response. Your muscles tense, your heart rate increases, your respiration increases, your mind becomes more sharp and alert. And this heightened state is designed to prime us to react swiftly when faced with threats. So externally, if you look at a body, you can actually see it as widened eyes, your chin pulls back, you start to breathe, and your heart beats, and you're readying yourself to respond. So I think just recognizing fear for what it is and being able to identify it as such will give you a little bit of leverage when it comes up to be able to relate to it in a way that is beneficial. I think that's the way with a lot of these patterns. You need distance in order to get leverage.
So let's talk about how fear arose itself in your process of writing your book. Did it do so?
I gotta be honest, man. I don't, where I have fear.
Yeah, where do you?
I have fear when I think of like stepping into an MMA fight to fight someone to the death. I guess it's like less fear and more like just like not feeling ready. Like I don't feel fear a lot in my day-to-day life. That's not something that I commonly encounter. So which is interesting to notice. It's not something I've thought about a lot. I guess I have fears. I have fears that all my work will be in vain. I have fears that all my efforts will be for naught, that I won't leave an impact, that I'll never be acknowledged. But I don't really linger in those too much. I don't really, I think that's one of my superpowers. Like I was saying, I'm not very easily intimidated. You know what my biggest fear is? I'll tell you what my biggest fear is. My biggest trauma is that I will be cast out of my community for a stupid mistake that I mindlessly make. That has been a pattern that has repeated a lot in my life. I do something just mindlessly, not with bad intentions, and it has like life-shattering repercussions. So that's, I think, my biggest fear. And I think it's one of the things that drives me to try to be my best. And although it does hold me back in some regards because I do play small in certain areas, I can't really help it because there's been many times in my life where I have showed up with nothing but good intentions. And for some reason, because of my big energy, because of just who I am, it has led to being kicked out of communities that I considered my family. So that's a fear, that's like, I very much fear that someday I'll do something stupid and get kicked out of my tribe and community that I was just talking about cherishing so much. But all I can do is just continue to try to move with the most integrity I possibly can. And when things do come up, just like put it up to God, just be like, well, this happened because of God. And
I believe that it's bringing you in better alignment to a new community, and it's creating you opportunity, and that's the hero's journey. It's highs and lows, so it's all happening for you. And like all three of your fears, my question to you for all three of them is like, are you enjoying it? And you seem to be making the most of your life and your now. So you're having fun, you're enjoying it, and then whatever the universe throws at you, it's happening for you. We're good.
whether it's good or not in the moment, I try to have faith in those times that I think faith is the ultimate antidote to fear. Just faith and humility to God. And, it's like, this is where I think this is the origin of our connection to something higher. This inner, like when we are afraid, when we don't know the way, to just look up and say, please help me. Thank you. I trust you. And yeah, I think faith is often dismissed as like a religious attribute, but I think it is a human attribute. And I think we all need to have that as a tool in our toolkit. Otherwise, these twists and turns of life can seem like too much. And even when they are too much, it's like, it's exactly what you need when you have faith.
So let's delve deeper into that toolkit of your book. I just want to be
Yeah.
considerate of time. So I just want to find one more tool in that book. What is calling you? Like, what kind of tool are you looking?
Well, I just remember you saying the book evolved into the end. You're teaching people how to connect with angels or with
Yeah,
high energies. I think that's an interesting topic I'd like to learn a little more about.
totally. So my perspective on a lot of this stuff, like I said, I'm coming at it from a trying to build on a foundation of scientific, realistic, practical context, because I know a lot of people hear angels and demons and they're immediately dismissive. So here's how I define it. Here's my definition. As we become aware of our mind, we start to recognize patterns, right? So there are reoccurring loops. When you can identify a reoccurring loop, you can name it. Now, this is the first step in taming demons. The reason that I use the word demons is because, well, for one, in computer programming, a daemon has a very specific, a daemon is an actual technical term. It means a program that does a specific output, right? And a lot of times these loops in our head are that, whether it's this particular fear program that every time you do this thing, it's saying this, right? It is almost it's a loop that has a particular recognizable set of features and outputs and characteristics. And, throughout all of human history, humans have related to these internal aspects of themselves by calling them spirits, by calling them demons, calling them, whatever they might call them, so I look at the Greeks, right? Like they understood the world in these terms. And I think the reason that it's useful is because these things are not necessarily unique. Like fear, for example, it's something that exists beyond an individual. Anger is something that exists beyond even humans, right? Like animals feel anger. So that reoccurring loop, it's like, does that exist within just us, or would that loop maybe exist as a frequency even beyond us all being here? Because maybe, you wipe out all life on Earth, you create some other form of life, and that life still gets possessed by anger. And it very much is a possession, right? It's like when that loop takes over you, it now is like moving through you. So you see why it is a demon in that sense. It's like now you are not yourself, but you are being moved by this force. And these forces have always existed, and they come to us in different forms. So starting to recognize them is the first step. Now, the second step is you can now, they say in the old stories, there's great power in names. Why is that? It's because when you name something, you now can see it and relate to it. So let's say I have a part of myself that is anxious, doesn't like to sit still. Whenever I'm sitting still, I want to move. I do have that part of myself. If I can see that loop when it comes up, I can now name it. Let's call it a puppy dog, right? It's just a little energetic puppy dog. Now what I just did there is I began to wardrobe it. So I started to create a visualization to put around that pattern. Now, this is important because if you don't wardrobe these patterns, they will wardrobe themselves, and they will often come to you in the form of you. They will wear your mask, or like they will come to you in the form of a advisor, like a wise advisor. And it's like, hey, you're just a little puppy dog. Like, so by creating these visualizations, you now have this image that you can then start to connect with. And when you can then relate to these things, you can name them, you can recognize them when they come up. When you can visualize them, you can now see them. When you can see them, you can now start to have a taxonomy of your internal state that you can then start to relate to, control. This guy needs to go over here. I need to call you in. You're needed right now. And this is the process of taming your internal demons. Now, demons I define as programs that have maladaptive processes. They all have good intentions. All of these things inside you they're there to serve you, but oftentimes their methods are outdated or not functional. Like your fear is trying to help you, right? But it doesn't know best. So the way to tame these demons is to recognize that they're in service of you, to acknowledge them, and to be able to not fight against them, but dismiss them with thanks. That's like the ultimate practice, right? Now, if a program is working for you, that's when I call it an angel, right? So we have these reoccurring archetypes that are actually always in service to us. And those are just like our better angels of our better nature, like our grace, our love, And these can come in many forms, right? They could come in animal archetypes. So maybe you have like a wolf, and now a wolf has certain associations, has certain connotations. And that is, you can call upon the energy of those connotations. Maybe it's an ancestor. An ancestor has a connection to your lineage, has a connection to your origin. It again carries a certain set of connotations. You can call upon that set of connotations and draw it forth. Or maybe it's a religious figure like Jesus or Buddha or Archangel Michael. All of them have their unique energetic signature. And it's not about if they're real or not. Because again, the central key is it doesn't matter what's real, it matters what works, right? So now that you have that key, you can start to unlock these further doors. So it's like, is Archangel Michael real? Doesn't matter. Can I call upon the energy of Archangel Michael, and can it serve me? Sure. Why the fuck wouldn't I, right? How do you invoke angels? So it's very important to create a space of receptivity for these higher forces. Just like you would invite a guest into your house, like maybe creating a space that's clean, ritualistic, ordered, making sure you're in a proper state, you're open, you're receptive to invite them in. So there is ways and methods upon which you can call upon these archetypical energies and bring them forth in a way to serve you that is more reliable than other less reliable ways. So that's a little bit about your angels and your demons. Now, how these exist as external forces, like we talked about, like these repeating loops actually exist not just in me, but they exist in you. They exist in the dog. They might even exist beyond life. So in that way, it's like, what really are these things? Are they, that's where, all of religion throughout, or all of religions throughout time have embodied them in different ways, but have recognized them as external forces, the forces of nature, the forces of the moon, the forces of, whatever particular archetype you want to represent. That's that section. And again, very important that it comes from a base of like understanding how the mind works and not necessarily needing to believe anything to get there.
Thank you for sharing that. I just want to be like, we're gonna have to have another chat with you.
Let's do it, bro. I'm ready whenever you guys are.
Before our final questions, do you have any other questions, or should we just head straight to these?
Can I read a closing section to you guys?
Sure. Well, yeah, you can for sure.
Just at the end, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Well, I have a few more questions for you. If you ask,
please, yeah, I got time.
But you can locate. You want to read that now, or at the end of our conversation? Mateo?
At the end.
Okay, at the end. Okay. So should we head to just right into these? Okay. So we asked every guest the final 3 questions, Mateo. We got to that point. Through all the highs and lows that is this hero's journey, what would you say has been the greatest life lesson that you've learned on your path that you feel called in this moment here to share with Kennedy and I and everyone else tuning in?
Again, I think it comes back to the importance of prioritizing the body first. That is the central node of my philosophy. And that comes down to like how we hold ourselves in each moment, right? Like our posture. If you can do nothing else, like lift your crown tall to the sky, open your shoulders, expand your heart, find your imbalances and start to center those imbalances, because that is a power that we all have in every moment. So every second, there's an opportunity to further bring yourself into better alignment, no matter where you are. If you're in jail, you can focus on the respiration of your breath, the pace of your breathing. Like there is power in every second to start to take a step in the right direction. And it starts in the body first. So I mean, that's the central main theme that I'm here to share, and that I try to represent in every moment.
You do. And thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm just so excited for the impact you're going to have with your book, edition 1, 2, 3, and beyond. In 3 words, Mateo, how would you describe the experience you were having on this earth? So it doesn't have to be a sentence, but in 3 words, what would be the 3 words you'd pick to describe to another human, to another entity, what experience you're having? in your seat, from your lens?
I'm flowing as I surf the waves,
Flowing.
flowing as I surf the waves.
Flowing as I surf the waves. Okay, great. We played around with time. We've examined your past. We've examined what you're doing in the present. Let's fast forward. And normally I say 85 years old, but you referenced at 90, you still want to be learning. So let's go to that 90-year-old Mateo. Who is that 9-year-old? Where are you? Who are you surrounded by? What is the legacy you've left in your 90 years? And what is the predominant feelings in your being?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to be very much in my prime in my 90s. I plan to live to like 200. So I'll be like halfway through my life at that point. I'll be the strongest I've ever been. I'll be hitting backflips like it's nothing. And I will be, I'll be on a beach somewhere, hopefully. Very, very, very much free and nomadic in the world, but grounded with spaces of transformation that I've created all throughout the world. I want to establish centers that hold all the tools for transformation within them, and then move among them, just sharing these keys and practicing, continuing to practice, continuing to play the game, continuing to write, continuing to learn, continuing to share, continuing to express, and continuing to flow and develop my art. What I love about movement is that it never gets old. We can be 90 years old. We'll still be getting better at jujitsu. We'll still be, maybe I'll be learning how to wakeboard better at that point in time, or, mastering some future form of tech. Have you ever heard of lift foils? I'll be shredding the lift foil, bro. Lift foils are dope. They're like these surfboards that are electric, but you float like 5 feet off the water. So you feel like you're fucking flying. I'll be shredding a lift foil on a beach somewhere, right next to my beachfront dojo, where I'm training every day to get better with a collection of awesome people and tribe around me. And just knowing that I've done my part.
Incredible. And what are the predominant feelings in your being?
Fulfillment. I just want to get to the end of my life fulfilled with the effort that I put in. I want to know that all of my sacrifices were worthwhile. And that's all I care about.
We're going to take a moment, Mateo, you, Kennedy, and we're going to step into that place of fulfillment. We're going to embody all our 90-year-old selves, and we're going to feel what that feels like to feel fulfilled at 90. So let's just tap in, tune in. Let's vibrate there. It's all a vibrate. Let's step into that vibration. From that place of deep fulfillment, I'm going to bring us back the present day, and that fulfilled as fuck 9-year-old Mateo, he shares something to you. What does he whisper in your ear, Mateo?
Well done. You did it. Good job. Proud of you, kid. And I am. I wish the whole world to feel this pride in their past self.
Thank you so much, brother. It's been such an honor.
I want to really thank you guys, because a big part of this journey going forward is, I've done this visualization before, and it's like, I've also written out the steps to get there. And a big step was getting this book out. Now the next step is I need to share this book with the world. So thank you guys so much for being a platform that I could step upon and just share these keys that I've worked so hard to cultivate. I really appreciate you both.
It's been a pleasure. Closing thoughts?
Great. I'm so excited to read your book. I have to get my hands on it right away.
Yeah, I really look for, and I'm very excited to hear how it lands with people, to just hear the feedback of what comes up as people go through this. I mean, I wish I had this book before I started writing this book, right? So I'm really I'm excited to give you one.
And it's available on Amazon. Embody Your Potential, a bridge between imagining and being. They can
Correct.
also on Instagram at embody_peak, and your
Mhm.
website epeakxp.com, which I know you're in the
Correct.
process of updating.
Mhm.
You said you wanted to share with something to close this episode.
Yeah, I would love to share the closing section of this book, which is called The Next Step Forward. Wherever you find yourself, the only way forward is to take your next step. As you move beyond these pages, my hope is that you walk away with your awareness anchored in your body. Value your awareness as your most treasured gift. Invest for best return by internalizing into your physical flesh first. Notice how you hold your posture in each moment. Expand, lengthen, and find balance. Play with the polarities. Accept yourself as dust in the wind, and still make the choice now that you and only you control yourself and your reality. Acknowledge everything that came before and made you who you are, and then take full ownership of your present, recognizing that responsibility is empowerment. Know your biggest responsibility is to control your diet, because what you consume becomes the building blocks of what you are. And who you are is the only thing limiting you from doing what you know you should. Move more often. Build the structure of your body through movement like a temple. Train the capacity of your body as a vessel so you can move to achieve your intentions without compromising your integrity. Character is defined by actions. Embrace the discomfort of pushing towards resistance, for it is the force that forms growth. Self-regulate your energy and mood through consciously pacing the depth of each breath, and surf the waves of your emotions by artfully drawing their origins to the electrical tides of your nervous system's impulse to survive. As you move forward on your way, notice the psychosomatic connection between what you feel and where it's stored as suppressed fascial tension, and give yourself the permission to express in order to cathartically release what you need to let go. When your emotions get triggered, pay attention to where your awareness flees and balance its dispersion through mindful redirection. Steady your stance into a sense of safety. Know that only when supported by this foundation of safety can you clear your heart and communicate constructively, uncolored by the shades of your emotional state. On top of this foundation, your inner vision opens. You can start to see that name the demons in your mind and invite your angels to guide. Unite the legions inside. Open the portals to your wellness and step through. By continually giving yourself permission to imagine that magic, well crafted, becomes true, your beliefs change reality. And through mastering your will, you make it so. The warrior and the artist live by the same creed that dictates the battle must be fought anew in each moment. So orchestrate each action with composure. By clearing what's in the way, you tune your body like an instrument that sounds and harmonizes vibration with what resonates. Learn to play the rhythms of your seasons like a song. Go into nature. Heal your disconnection. Put your bare feet often on the ground. Map your path towards an authored destiny, but act before you overthink, knowing that mistakes as external feedback are the only way we ever have to learn. Listen to your intuition and discern. No matter what you face, step forward from a sacred pause of presence. Spend your time wisely on a life well lived. Experience the peaks and learn acceptance of the valleys. As you climb towards the top, remember why. Aim to be somebody who can give, and devote the sweat of all your efforts to something greater than yourself. Through this aspiration, your sense of separation starts to melt, and your being integrates into one with all that is. Take the next step forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mateo. We close every episode. We bring our fists together to the winner circle. Boom. Thanks, brother.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's such a pleasure to drop in and share this time space with you.
Amazing, thank you.
Bye, friends.